It's a mouthful. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the other side of medicine. I'm Dr. Christosik, and we have a special guest with us tonight. And I'm not going to even try to say his name because my name's difficult, but his name is over the top. So, Dr. Nick is an accomplished chiropractic physician and specializing in neurology as well. And he has done many things to accomplish many different academic achievements in this venue. And I'll let him share a little bit of those because I think it's quite impressive. And he is going to be talking tonight about the association between the gut microbiome specifically, and how exercise influences the gut microbiome. So I'm going to step out of the way. I'm going to let Dr. Nick say his last name, first of all, and tell us a little bit about his academic background and what he does every single day, and what his vision is for people with health, exercise, and the gut microbiome, and this whole venue that we want to dive into. So Dr. Nick, welcome to the other side of medicine.
Dr. J, thank you for having me.
Hold on. You're not going to try to attempt to say my last name?
Well, you just said it was tough, but I couldn't. Dr. Christosik.
Wow, that is impressive. Folks, you're in for a real treat tonight. This guy is on his game. Okay, go for it.
So, Dr. Nick Schmidlkofer, but Dr. Nick is perfectly fine.
Okay, say that one more time.
Dr. Nick Schmidlkofer.
Whew.
Very German.
I love it. I love it. That's a great name. Say it just for the third time's the charm. One more time.
Dr. Nick Schmidlkofer.
Okay. Dr. Nick Schmidlkofer, welcome to the other side of medicine. Take it away.
So I am a chiropractic neurologist. So trained in chiropractic as normal, and then did a additional diplomate exam or diplomate in chiropractic neurology. That's 300 hours of extra education plus a physical and a written exam at the end. I'm originally from Wisconsin, Wind Lake, Wisconsin. Grew up around here. I wanted to get into some sort of medicine to help people. Only had ever been to a PT and a medical doctor before that. And a chiropractor came into my health class in high school, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Never been to a chiropractor before. Went to chiropractic school. My first adjustment on myself was in chiro school. And I just knew that I wanted to help people in a more complementary, alternative way without the use of medication, because I never really liked medication and never really worked for any of my injuries when I was young and an athlete. Played a lot of baseball, football, and a little bit of basketball as a kid. Went to
you said basketball. That was music to my ears.
Just a little bit.
I'm a big time basketball player, and I'm at 76 still playing full court basketball. Well, I was just before I had this major accident. I almost got killed 3 months ago. But I'll be back in my game. I play with Kent State students, 20-year-olds, full court basketball. So anyways.
It's awesome. Yeah. And so I went to Carthage College, played D3 baseball there. And then when I went to chiropractic school, that's when I found out that I could actually do neurology and treat patients with complex conditions of the brain, whether it be concussions, TBIs, POTS, and dysautonomia. So people that have problems going from laying down to standing up without getting dizzy and lightheaded and having a lot of fatigue and heart palpitations potentially, and dizziness, a lot of different mental health conditions or neurodegeneration, ADHD, and autism in our young folks. And so once I found out that I could treat these conditions and I saw people having success, I just wanted to dive in and intern a lot and shadow a lot. And then I started all of the extra courses, and now I lived in Chicago for 5 years, helped start that part of our practice at the Neurological Wellness Institute. And now I've been back home in Muskego, Wisconsin for the last 2 years with a clinic up here. Same thing, the Neurological Wellness Institute.
Wonderful. Well, first question I'd like to ask is, since you're treating all these neurological conditions, have you had any experience with people with dementia or Alzheimer's? Because that's an area of interest that is really starting to grow quite um, in the research arena. There's research on how the gut health can influence the dementia, patients with dementia and Alzheimer's. And of course, there's other things that can be done with functional medicine to help people with those types of conditions. But have you had any experience in that realm?
Of course, I have a ton of experience with dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's really about finding the source, right? The source of inflammation. And that could be coming from the gut. It could be coming from a poor diet. It could be coming from lack of nutrients. It could be coming from toxins in our environment. And there's just many other things. So we got to find the cause. But then once we find the cause and we start getting rid of the cause, then it's about activation. And that's kind of where my realm really gets in. So while I do help find the cause and treat the cause, I may refer to somebody who's better than me at functional medicine to really get in the rabbit holes there. But where I really come in is stimulating the brain in a certain way to initiate neuroplasticity. And while some people think you can't teach an old dog a new trick, you really can. And you can really just get more blood flow and nutrients to the area by activating the brain, activating certain pathways in a cohesive manner to really improve a patient's memory.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. And it's unfortunate that the conventional medicine model stops with the prescriptions. And we know that with that, it doesn't really have very good success with dementia and Alzheimer's. And there's a lot of toxic elements, which really adds more layers of problems on top of that.
For sure.
So my model is very similar to yours, although I add other dimensions that you probably don't, and that's why each practice has its own, flavor, and so we complement each other and are able to really help people to access the best of the best. So let's talk a little bit about how the exercise and routine exercising, not just occasional, but how exercise can influence the gut microbiome, the diversity, especially inside the gut, because diversity inside of the gut of the microorganism is paramount. We know that in our culture here in the United States, the diversity of the microbiome is very poor. Well, on average, there might be 100 to 150 different types of microorganisms living inside the gut. However, if you look at indigenous populations around the world who are eating, the natural foods and living in natural environments, we're talking about people in the blue zones, or we're talking about people, indigenous tribes of different people that are living in Africa and different parts of the world that are not as developed. They have up to 300 and 350 different types of microorganisms. These microorganisms living inside your gut. So how does exercise influence the diversity inside the gut microbiome?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we know exercise is good for a lot of things. It's good for getting blood flow moving, getting blood flow to the brain. It's good for muscle activation, and muscle activation helps to save bone health, especially if we can increase our strength in our muscles. And of course, there's got to be some influence of exercise on the gut. It just, it can't be this, obviously our system, our human body is just so integrated. And so movement is going to affect our gut. My favorite thing actually about the gut is that gravity plays a huge role on it from when we develop. And so gravity coming from like our internal ear, our vestibular system. And obviously when we're laying down as a baby and we have to go from laying down to standing and walking in that first year of life, that's where the gut is really starting to shape. And we have all these different connections to our spine from our gut, right? Our gut's just this big long tube that's all coiled up in our belly, and it's got to stay connected. And so when we exercise, the exercise has to, like, especially a lot of movement and up and down movement, we have to have good connections and good ligament connections to keep our gut where it is. But that movement itself is good, and movement of the gut is going to really activate the brain, right? 80% of our vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is that typical nerve that a lot of people like to look at when it comes to like our rest and digest system. And 80% of that is actually coming from the gut and our heart and our lungs and going up and telling our brain about what's going on down there. What neurotransmitter is being produced by the microbiome? Is there any inflammation? And so all of that movement, physical movement, when we exercise, when we jump, when we move, when we run, is activating our brain.
Yeah, Doc,
Yep.
just so we don't I guess overwhelm our audience here.
Yeah.
We were talking specifically about the gut right now. There's
Sure.
what we call gut-brain axis. The
100%.
connection between the gut and the brain is profound. So let's focus on that a little bit right now and talk about how that connection with the vagus nerve inside the gut is influenced by exercise.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I wanted to get to. Like the 80% going up. Now the microbiome is having some influence over our brain, right? And so when we exercise is increasing the diversity of our microbiome, which then has more neurotransmitters that are going up to our brain. If we have a poor diversity of our gut microbiome because we don't exercise, because we have a sedentary lifestyle, and that poor diversity leads to less neurotransmitters or less diverse neurotransmitters going up to talk to the brain and give it information. And that information is so important for our autonomic sense, so the brain can come back down and control digestion, starting from the stomach with a proper pH balance, a proper acidic balance. Our stomach should be very, very acidic to break down all of the foods that we eat and prevent infections from foods, from affecting our gut. And so, the exercise is so important in improving the gut microbiome so that we have the brain-gut microbiome axis working properly. And there's a lot of communication back and forth, and that communication is happening constantly, 24/7.
Now, we're talking about diversity of different types of microorganisms, and we know that, for example, Akkermansia eosinophilia is one of those microorganisms that has profound effect on our bodies, producing things like short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, and that helps to heal the gut lining and helps to boost the immune system, reduce inflammation, so many things. So, and bifidobacteria is another one. Does exercise influence and increase those type of microorganisms?
100%. So this is a perfect time to get into this article here that I have from 2022. Let's get to
wonderful.
it, maybe.
Yeah, this is exciting. People, this is a very special experience we're having tonight. Dr. Nick has some great experience, and I was first introduced to his lecture on this particular topic, and I was really impressed with his presentation on this. So I think you're really in for a surprise and some really good insights into how the gut and the brain are affected and how exercise has an influence on our gut health and our gut microbiome. So Dr. Nick, go ahead, please take over. So,
okay. And you can see my screen, right?
You're listening to The Other Side of Medicine, and we're here every single Friday. We're live on social media every Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'd love to have you come back. And I have nationally and internationally known experts like Dr. Nick who come on the podcast, and we discuss things that are related to functional medicine. And really, I really like to focus on gut health because that is my primary focus. And I really like it to get experts in this area. So Dr. Nick has some really wonderful things to share in that. Go ahead, Dr. Nick.
Okay. So this article is from 2021. It's called The Interplay Between Exercise and Gut Microbiome in the Context of Human Health and Performance. And I'm just going to briefly go over the abstract here because it's really good. And then I'll get
Where
to
was
some
that
pictures.
published, by the way?
Where or when?
Yeah, where was it published in the article? It's called
Where?
The Frontiers. Frontiers?
Oh, yes. Frontiers. Yep. Sorry. Yeah. Frontiers in
That's a
Nutrition.
medical journal on frontiers. And again, it's on nutrition. So this is relevant to what we're talking about in a very big way.
Yep. So this article basically says it's been long known that the gut microbiome and exercise have been always interconnected, similar to how the brain and gut axis are interconnected constantly. And moderate exercise has been shown to have positive effects for average athletes, right? Average athletes are each one of us, right? We're all athletes in some way. We all have muscles. We all move. And so anybody that's, walking, exercising in some way at a gym, in their own house is an average athlete. And this improvement is, right, a reduction in inflammation and intestinal permeability. So that like leaky gut, we can decrease leaky gut, we can decrease inflammation and improve body composition just by having moderate exercise.
Okay, so Dr. Nick, I'm going to pause you just there for a minute because I don't want to go too fast for our audience because somebody may not know what the leaky gut is. And so just real simplistically, leaky gut is when the lining of the intestinal tract, I want to make an analogy to like a filter on a coffee machine. And so the coffee grinds can't get through the filter, but the liquid can. And if you have a leaky gut, what happens is poor diet, overuse of medications, lack of exercise, toxins in the environment. It irritates that lining of the gut, the walls of the gut. And it's kind of like a little sandpaper rubbing on the gut lining all day long for your whole day long. And, if you're living this way and eating toxic toxic foods, then what's going to happen is it's going to cause to have little micro tears. It's just like if you have that coffee filter and there are little tears, coffee grinds can get in the coffee. You don't want that. But you don't want to get toxins going from the gut lining and getting into the bloodstream and then traveling all the way around the body to the heart, to the lungs, the liver, to the skin, and to your brain. So we don't want that to happen. That's leaky gut. They call it, in medical terms, increased intestinal permeability. You don't need to remember that. Just remember leaky gut, and it's bad.
Thank you. So while moderate exercise can improve all that, intense exercise can actually increase leaky gut, increase that epithelial wall permeability, increasing leaking gut, and therefore diminish gut mucus thickness. So on top of that wall in the gut lining, there's mucus that is supposed to kind of protect it from damage, protect it from maybe the higher acid that's in our gut. And then therefore intense exercise could potentially lead to pathogens entering the bloodstream because that mucus lining is not there, that intestinal barrier is not there, and leaky gut allows things to get in. So while moderate exercise is good, intense exercise may be poor in average athletes. But elite athletes actually have a higher gut microbial diversity, which allows more production of short chain fatty acids. And what's cool about that is the higher gut microbiome diversity, besides just having more neurotransmitters, better brain gut axis, is producing more short chain fatty acids, which is food for the intestinal lining. That intestinal lining is made up of cells, and every cell needs energy. And short chain fatty acids can be quick, fast energy for the lining of the gut, and therefore helping to keep it nice and strong.
Yeah, Dr. Nick, I was just going to share with the audience. I wanted to share that you had mentioned exercise, moderate exercise, not elite exercise athletes. I'm certainly not an elite athlete. I'm this typical moderate, athlete who likes to get out there and run and bicycle and swim and work out in the gym. And just for a warning for our listening audience, not only does it, I wasn't aware of this before I saw this study that you brought up, I was actually doing damage to my gut lining. I thought I was actually doing good. I was doing high interval training. And not only was I damaging my gut, but at 76 years old, I was on the treadmill doing 9 sets of 30 seconds, like increase, I mean, high intensity. I was like really hitting it hard. And one day I did about 9 sets. And after about 6 months, I came off the treadmill and I was like, whoa. I said, did I just have a mini stroke? And sure enough, I found out about 3 months later that I had a mini stroke, and that increased my risk for having seizures. So please be careful not to overdo it if you're not an athlete who's been trained to be doing intense exercise. Just go kind of take it easy. That's my warning.
Yeah. So Dr. J, how long was that intense bout? You said 9 sets. Like how long were you on the treadmill?
I was on a treadmill for 30 seconds intense.
Okay. So 30 seconds intense. So it lasted like 20 minutes, right? Total. If you like rested in between, I assume.
Oh, I would rest in between. I would do 30 seconds intense and I'd do a minute of rest.
Got it. Okay. Yep. So, in 30 seconds, especially depending if it's going that intense, that can be a lot for sure. And HIIT training is variable, right? You could do 5 minutes of HIIT training and at like a really high intensity, and that might be perfectly fine because it's initiating enough of a signal, but you then have that rest afterwards, right? This is where like elite athletes, they might have HIIT training for a long time, but they're elite athletes for a reason. They probably it's kind of their job. They have a lot of time to sleep and recover and all those things that we as average athletes, weekend warriors, we don't really have. We might have a job that we have to do. We might have kids. And so maybe while we're trying to work out for 30 to 60 minutes at high intensity a few times a week, that might be too much. Maybe it's got to be 15 minutes once or twice a week and then moderate the rest of the time. So I think that's just really important to understand that we're not, if your job isn't to be an athlete, then you probably aren't doing all the things that are important to recover from training that prevents this gut microbiome issue with the intense exercise.
Yeah. So continue on with
Yep.
what you were talking about in that particular study.
For sure. So it's a lot of the same stuff. It just has a really good picture here with it.
I like these illustrations here.
Yeah, me too. So it's just saying the progressive increase of physical activity level on that intestinal microbiome. So from cardiorespiratory fitness, a low sedentary individual to a more high intense activity individual, or physical activity being low to moderate and intense activity. And as we go from the physical inactivity group, we have way more of pathobiont species, basically microbiome that are more pathogenic in nature. They might be releasing different gases that are pathogenic. They might be releasing things that cause more inflammation. And so you're going to have more species like that. Now, is it purely the inactivity? Is it also everything else they're doing with their diet and lifestyle? It's probably a lot of everything, right? But as we get into more light activity, moderate, intense, we see that there is an increase in bacterial diversity. All these bacteria here, we're seeing more different colors. And the more bacterial diversity we have, the more that we can produce short-chain fatty acids. We get more bifidobacteria and lactobacillus and akkermansia, and different species that can produce more of those short-chain fatty acids, which is that food for the lining. And you can see all those little tiny cells on that lining. They're all one cell layer thick. All the little orange circles are the nucleus, and they need to be fed to maintain that barrier.
Yeah, so that's the lining of the gut.
Did you have something?
Those ups and downs, valleys and hills. That's the lining of the gut. And so nutrients, as Dr. Nick was just saying, gets absorbed through those cells and go into the bloodstream. So you see that white area, that's the, we call that the lumen. That is the tube of the gut. And then you've got the cells that line the wall, which are that ups and downs, those valleys and those those peaks. And those cells is where the nutrients then get into the blood. You want to get nutrients into the blood, but you don't want those toxic bacteria to get in. You want those toxic bacteria to get in there. And if you've got leaky gut, those toxic bacteria are going to get through there and they're going to get into the bloodstream. So that's something really important. And I just want to again, that warning about if you are not an elite athlete and you're just training, a couple, 2-3 times a week, don't overdo it, because you could then increase the toxic bacteria, and also the leaky gut can get worse if you do it too much, if you're not trained to do it.
100%. There is one more, I believe, here. Yep, here it is. Okay, so let's see. All right, so as we kind of mentioned before, right, there's so much input from our brain, our cardiovascular system, our muscular system, with our physical adaptations, right, to exercise. We're changing. It's such an important thing for us from a global level to also cellularly with our mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cell that make energy, our glucose metabolism, so that we can maintain good metabolic balance and we don't have metabolic dysfunction. And so all of this is so important. But specifically, if we are getting good energy from eating well, we can feed our gut microbiome. But at the same time, the exercise itself is also going to make the microbiome more diverse, which then comes back and gives us that short chain fatty acids, which here they are: acetate, propionate, and butyrate. These 3 short chain fatty acids that go back into us and give our intestinal lining these great energy. And then you can see the green in here is the cell mucus. And so that's what I was saying initially with you. The cell mucus helps to maintain or prevent inflammation from affecting these cells. It helps maintain that barrier to prevent leaky gut. And so,
yeah, and by the way, you mentioned acromencia. That acromencia actually increases the mucus layer of the gut lining. That's one of the things it does, besides helping to build up a stronger immune system and reduce inflammation. It does all those things, but it does specifically help to increase that mucus barrier, that lining.
100%. Yep. So as it kind of shows over here, increases species diversity, increasing metabolite producing bacteria, which is basically saying the same thing, to make more short chain fatty acids. It increases that intestinal barrier, helps decrease inflammation, right? So the physical exercise can do just great things for our gut and our gut microbiome to maintain a healthy gut. And it's kind of interesting, as much as we can do for our health nutrition wise, some people just can't stick to a perfect nutrition, right? Some people want to cheat here and there. And if we can exercise on a regular basis, cheating makes us, or we are more resistant or resilient to the foods that we eat when we cheat, right? And so that's why this can be so important. Even if we know, like traveling, like being stressed and maybe being on a flight that we change 3 or 4 time zones, like that changes our gut microbiome, that stresses our system. So if we can continue to exercise when we travel, before and after, in that moderate way, right, we can continue to keep our gut microbiome in a steady, happy state to be resilient to a lot of the stressors we put on it on a daily basis, whether that be.
Yeah, that's a really good way we could segue into stress, which is it's like an American Express card. You can't leave home with or without it. You know, we have stress everywhere we go. And so, how does exercise influence stress, and how does that help then again to reduce inflammation, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, right? So ideally people like exercise and they like what they're doing. So something that's fun and enjoyable can reduce stress, right? If you don't like what you're doing, and and you don't feel good after exercise, then you're probably either doing too much or you're doing something that's not necessarily good for you, right? So you have to either learn to like something or make sure you're not overdoing it and pushing your body past the limits where afterwards you don't get that good feeling of, hey, I did something, I accomplished something. And then same thing with stress. Stress a lot of times can come from our neurotransmitters and our gut microbiome. And so if we have poor bacterial diversity, then we're not making the neurotransmitters to affect our brain the correct way with serotonin and norepinephrine and dopamine.
So we're talking again to our listening audience benefits. These neurotransmitters are things like you just mentioned, serotonin and dopamine and, norepinephrine. These, by the way, 90% of the serotonin is made inside the gut, which most people don't realize.
Yep.
So that's what he's talking about when he said neurotransmitters. And these things are things that influence things like depression and anxiety. So that, again, exercise is going to help to get these microbes to get to be more diverse. And the more diverse they have, the more types of microorganisms you have, the more you're going to have these production of these good neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine and others, right?
100%. Yep. Serotonin is more of the happy hormone, I think, or so I consider it. The dopamine is for reward. And so really good to reward yourself after certain exercises with something. And norepinephrine gives you energy, right? It's the alert and oriented, and it really gives you energy. So we need to make sure we have all those and ready at the time of the day that we want them, from the start of the morning we wake up till the end of the day, to really keep our energy going. And we know that, poor dietary choices can affect us. We know that stress in our life. So obviously we can't really take away external stressors, but we can change our attitude around the external stressors. And if you make it a challenge that is overcome, you can take every little battle one at a time. And hopefully you overcome more battles than you lose in a day. And then at the end of the day, you feel accomplished because you accomplished more things. And you just had to, when you go to bed at night, so you can make sure you maintain your sleep and get good sleep, you write down the things you got to do the next day and toss it away and don't think about it and get good sleep. And
yeah, how does exercise influence sleep?
Yeah. So over-exercise can cause too much inflammation, as we've already mentioned, and can make sleep poor. Too much exercise right before bed could increase our cortisol, our stress system, and prevent falling asleep. Now, the one thing I think is really cool about that is you think about all these elite athletes that they all are on prime time, right? They all have 7 p.m. games, or they're not going to bed till midnight, but they still do it because they have really, really strong systems where they can increase that fight or flight system during the event or the game or whatever it may be, but then they can quickly get back down into that rest state before they go to bed. And so the more we exercise, let's say this, from a sedentary person, if we exercise, the more we exercise, the more that we stress our system so that we are more tired and we have restful sleep at night. But if you do too much, that can cause too much inflammation, affect our recovery process, where we're actually not able to fully recover because most of us only get 6 to 8 hours of sleep, right? Our goal should be at least 7, 8, and if you're really exercising a lot, maybe more. And the problem is that a lot of people, they're trying to just fit in exercise and then they take away sleep. And I think that's against everything. We should have just that moderate, mild type of exercise with making sure we maintain our good sleep.
Yeah, what people don't know as well is that during sleep and during rest, especially during sleep, in that 7 or 8 or 9 hours of sleep, our body goes into a system called autophagy. And that's basically a repair mode of the body. And it begins to repair things like the damage to the lining of the gut, right?
Yep, for sure. Sure.
So that's something that exercise can really get you to sleep better. And then when you go to sleep, your body can then go into repair the lining of the gut. It's like a cycle. So it's a circular motion.
It also helps improve lymphatic drainage from the brain, right? Lymphatic drainage, we have a lymphatic system that drains our body. We have a glymphatic system that drains our brain of waste, because our brain is our most metabolic.
Explain to our audience what the lymphatic system is in a simplistic fashion, and the glymphatic system.
Yep. Yeah. So the lymphatic system is draining waste. So we have cardiovascular system that takes blood to our cells, our venous system that brings blood back. That's kind of like a dirty CO2 rich that is going to be breathed out. But then we also have this system, the lymphatic system, that's bringing back waste that could be damaged cells, it could be infections, viruses, whatever it may be, and they're bringing it back to a central point to put it back into circulation. And at each point, different points in our armpits and our groin and up in our neck, we have lymph nodes that are surveying that. And so we have to have good lymph movement. If we don't have good lymph movement, then things are going to get stagnant in our limbs. And stagnant in our limbs doesn't means that we can't survey these different infections. We can't get waste out of our legs or our arms. So the glymphatic system does the same way. If we had a flu or a virus and we have inflammation in our brain, we need to have a glymphatic system that drains that waste, gets that waste out, gets the viruses out, so our immune system doesn't keep attacking and causing this chronic inflammation. Lymphatic system is going to drain very well through our nose, through our internal carotid artery or veins, internal jugular veins, and then out each spinal segment, each spinal nerve. And having good range of motion in our movement, exercise, which causes those perturbations of any way and movement in our spine, is going to flush out and help that lymphatic system. And
so the exercise then actually helps to drain out the glymphatic system as well and get rid of those toxic elements.
100%. It happens the most during deep sleep, but it's going to happen a little bit during the day with just proper movement. And the more movement we have, the better the lymphatic system happens during sleep.
Sure. Wonderful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, if we can, talk about how exercise can it help people to get out of having things like irritable bowel syndrome or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Can exercise, along with proper diet and lifestyle, can exercise have a significant influence in helping to heal and repair those type of conditions?
I 100% think it can. It plays a huge role, right? There's so many factors that go into it. And let's talk about IBS first. So many factors that go into IBS. Whether it is a brain-gut axis piece, whether it is a sedentary lifestyle or a stress piece, diet piece, whatever that may be. And so exercise truly does play a role. When we look at SIBO, I mean, yes, it's going to play a role because exercise is going to make sure that we get more motility and push the bacteria that are in the small intestine that they shouldn't be there, get that movement so they can get pushed out. But there might be other functional medicine things with herbs and other supplements that might be necessary, right? But exercise will for sure play a role in that motility piece.
Wonderful. Yeah, just for our listening audience benefit, when we're talking about SIBO, that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and a lot of people have that, and you don't want to have these bacteria growing in the small intestine in large numbers. You want to have most of the bacteria growing in the large intestines. And all these bacteria we're talking about that are beneficial are in the latter part of the digestive tract, in the colon. And that's where we want to have this diversity. We don't want to have a lot of bacteria living in the small intestine. And that's what Dr. Nick is talking about, flushing that out of there with exercise.
For sure.
So when you talk about, did you mention, was it inflammatory bowel syndrome, or was it irritable bowel syndrome?
You said irritable bowel. I thought I said irritable, but yeah, okay. Irritable bowel, IBS.
Okay, yeah, so good. What about inflammatory bowel disorders like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis?
Yep, both of those are autoimmunities, right? There's generally some sort of trigger that's continually triggering, whether that be a viral trigger or a diet, food sensitivity trigger. And so while exercise can be beneficial and keep people maybe more in remission, there's definitely something that needs to be addressed from a dietary lifestyle piece, or maybe chronic infection piece, for sure.
Yeah, I've treated hundreds and hundreds of people with autoimmune diseases. And again, the medical community doesn't have an answer for it. What they do is they give them the anti-inflammatories, the steroids. And then if you're talking about things like in the gut, they'll end up, if those stop working, it gets too bad, they'll want to remove parts of the small intestines, or they may even want to remove the entire large intestine if it gets too bad. And I've had patients who were told that they had to have either parts of their small intestines or their entire large intestine removed. And yet, after we found the triggers, whether it was toxins or poor microbiome or a poor lifestyle, whatever it was, we removed all those things and restored the body. We were able to get those people to have normal function again, and they canceled surgery, got off medications. So it's encouraging for our listening audience to understand that there is hope, and there is a lot of things that can be done besides using pharmaceuticals and surgical procedures. And that's what the pharmaceutical industry would love for people to stay on for the rest of their life. And that's what most doctors are trained to do. But we're talking about a whole different avenue here, that people have an opportunity to help their body to heal itself, because it's designed to do that on its own, if you are able to incorporate the kind of lifestyle that we're talking about.
For sure. Yes, it is.
Yeah. So anyways, what I guess are some of the key elements that you would like to hit on before we wrap our evening up here?
I think the biggest thing is that you got to get moving in some way, right? We shouldn't have any sedentary days. And the reason why I say that is, like, every day should have some sort of walking element, right? If all you want to do in your life is walk, that's probably good enough, but it's not going to help a lot of other things if from a whole musculoskeletal brain aspect, like ideally there's some sort of strength training or flexibility training or a lot of other things, but every day should have some sort of walk in it, right? Most people, they don't walk 10, 15 minutes a day. And if we can get people off the couch, get moving, especially get out in the sunlight a little bit, improve circadian rhythm, which we didn't even talk about, but can also have a huge influence on sleep and the microbiome. I think it's important. So people just got to get moving and pushing themselves.
Okay. And in a general sense, when you're walking, it's just an average walk, and not a medium speed, if you're going out and exercise, how long does it take to do 3,000 steps approximately?
I have no idea. I know I can do a mile in like 17, 18 minutes. Okay. And that's me walking at a relatively average pace.
So 3,000 steps, we're going to get a mile.
Okay. Yeah. So 17, 18 minutes. Yep.
So if we go from 3,000 to 10,000, that, that's a little bit increased, but it's not impossible. People can get to that and slowly train to that point. Yep. The diversity of the microbiome in research has shown that there is a dramatic increase in the level of the diversity, with people doing that type of exercise. So it's a goal to set, and we can get there if we add different types of exercise as well. So we're going to encourage our listening audience to get out there and just start moving, whatever you can do. Walking, bicycling, running, playing basketball, playing tennis, whatever you can do, just get out there and start to exercise. Mm-hmm. And we know, with all the research that's being done, that not only the microbiome is increased, the diversity is increased, but our cardiovascular system is increased, our brain function is improved, our sleep is better, on and all the things we're talking about tonight. So it's encouraging to see the research that you have talked about tonight. And is there anything that you would like to leave our audience with this evening, Dr. Nick?
No, I think I think we've covered a lot tonight. So
good. Well, this has been a pleasure, and I would love to have you back again in the future and maybe update us on some of the current research that's findings that you uncover, and we could discuss some of those things in the future.
Awesome. That'd be fantastic.
All right, my friend, and everyone, again, you're listening to The Other Side of Medicine. We're here every Thursday live on social media, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and YouTube. And then on Fridays, we're on the podcast, The Other Side of Medicine. And you can get that a replay if you want to share this with your family or friends or loved ones. You can share tonight's episode with them. And also, I have a community that I have that's in school. Some of you may know what school is. Dr. Nick, are you familiar with school?
Yes.
The community, yeah. I have a community in school called Gut 911 RX. So it's the Gut 911 RX. We just started the community. And so you get lots of free resources. I've written 7 books on natural medicine. You get access to my books. You get access to other people just like you who are trying to live a healthy lifestyle. You get to learn from people like Dr. Nick, who I'm sure we could have maybe even in our Gut 911 community come and share some of his knowledge. He has extraordinary knowledge. So please join into our community in school. Just go to my website, theothersideofmedicine.com, and you can see that there's the Gut 911 prescription in some of those tabs there. And so we'd love to have you join. And then again, listen to this episode again, tell your family and friends about it. Dr. Nick has brought a wealth of information to us tonight, and we just really appreciate you, Dr. Nick. So we'd like to say good night to everybody, and take care. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.